Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, another great day in the Industrial Talk world. This is your warm and fuzzy place for all things industrial, you industry hero. We celebrate you because you are bold, brave, daring greatly. You're changing lives, you're solving problems, and in essence, changing the world. How about that, man? You are absolutely wonderful. And this is a no legacy thinking zone. Do not come to me with your legacy thinking and say, hey, Scott, get some legacy thinking. Don't even go there. All right. In the hot seat, in the Industrial Talk hot seat, we have Humera Malik, okay? And she is the CEO of Canvas AI, and that is spelled Canvass AI. You got that, right? And the website, the wonderful website, is canvas.io. Make a note of that. Make a note of that. We're going to be talking on this podcast accelerating sustainability in industrial operations and a lot more because there's gold in that data. Let's get cracking. Yep. Data. You got to love data, right? There's so much that can be done with data. And I think the future, that whole silver lining type of thing within data is interesting to me, geeky-ish, and love it because we don't have any issues grabbing definitely data. Now, her stat card is quite impressive out on LinkedIn. You got to reach out to her. Humera Malik is the individual, and I'm telling you, she's got mad street cred. I like it, man. I like it a lot. All right, paper and pencil time. The first one out of the gate, we're going to be talking about IoT Solutions World Congress, brought to you by IoT Solutions World Congress out of Barcelona, as well as the Industrial Internet Consortium. And this event is scheduled for October 5th through the 7th. If you've never been to Barcelona, yeah, that's a must trip. And the second thing, and if you've never been to the IoT Solutions World Congress, yeah, that's a good thing, too. They're going to be talking about IoT, AI, 5G, digital twin, robotics, everything. And one that is sort of interesting to me, quantum computing. Woo, that sounds impressive. All right, the next one. The Manufacturing and Technology Show. That is in Cleveland, Ohio, again. If you've never been to Cleveland, that's a must trip. Great people, great food, great location, great everything. It's beautiful up there. And this is November 9th through the 11th, 2021. Right around the corner, sort of. It's down in November, but it'll be here when you at least expect it. But anyway, both of these events are important. Let's get our lives back in order. Let's just do it. Let's take the trips. Let's start learning from these leaders because there's some great stuff in this whole Industry 4.0 world that we're venturing into, as you all know, it is. But it's just an exciting time to be a part of what we're doing in industry. And that is water, that is oil and gas, that's manufacturing, that's utilities. We had a great conversation of the utility transformation journey because they're going to have to do it too. They're just going to have to do it. All right. Humera's on the hot seat. We got a great doggone conversation. I mean, she starts to really lay the lumber, and it could go on and on and on. But I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy this conversation. So here's Humera. Humera, thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. I'm telling you, listeners, right now, I'm going to geek out on this particular conversation. We've been having a wonderful offline conversation about AI, about the world, and really just changing the world through insights into data. Humera and the team, Canvas AI, leading the way. Fantastic. Humera, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thank you for having me.
All the way from Toronto. Give us a little background, a little 411 into who you are and why you're such an incredible professional.
Well, I call myself a disruptor because I've gone in and picked some of the hardest things to solve in the world, I think, and it's yet not to a place where I'm very passionate about the industry we work in. And just like yourself, I think we're all on a mission here. And the mission that I've gotten myself in Canvas on is really looking at how we make a difference in the industrial world and empower the people and augment them to transform the operations that they do in their day-to-day activities, and empower them with some technologies like AI so that they can take control of their data, so that they're not reliant on anybody else to come in and perform any of the data-related functions for them.
Yeah.
And we're here to make a difference, but that difference can only be made once you actually take the charge and start calling out what this industry's challenge has been and how we're going to all work together to transform it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that education, collaboration, and innovation, and you cover all aspects of that. And I believe that that is a key to how you want to survive, how do you want to prosper in this whatever next normal. And I don't know about you listeners, but I'm getting all tingly about that explanation, because I believe the future is with people like Humera and others at Team Canvas. By the way, I need to make sure that they're clear. Canvas is CANVASS.
Right.
So make a note of that. And it's .io is the website. So anyway, I'm all tingly about this particular topic because I think there's golden data. And I think that is transformative. And I believe that companies as a whole will tremendously benefit by what your focus, your disruption, your the view of how to solve problems. So give us a little background, because I think you guys are thought leaders. I know you guys are thought leaders because you're in the game. You're in the game to be able to come up with solutions that actually mine that data. So let's talk a little bit about sustainability and how data can help us with that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So one thing I would say is we're thought leaders, but we're executing on it, not just talking about it, right? We're making a difference. That's why I call it all about making a difference.
So noted. Absolutely. Putting it in action. Forgive me, Humera.
Totally understand.
But I love that because you're doing it, man. You're doing it. All right.
So Canvas so before I get into sustainability, for the sake of the viewers, Canvas AI is really a software platform. And it's on a journey to transform this industry. It's on a journey to disrupt this industry that has been so scared and reliant on people from outside to give them control of their operations, of their data. And so this is really a journey that we undertook about 4 years ago. And now we're at a place where we see this industry just at the tip of that transformation. It's first is about awareness, and then it's about after you've gone through that awareness and recognition, is then really about how and where do I go about implementing things like AI. And that's where this industry is. It's at that edge of where it's ready and it's actually implementing. And it's not just, the big guys out there. It's not just talking about the Fortune 100.
Yeah.
We have had the opportunity to see the guys that are in the mid-market as well now who are ready. They've actually been running very efficient operations. They're ready to get out of just efficiency, move towards productivity, and eventually into automation. And so that fear is now, they're getting over that fear. The challenge this industry has, if you look at any of the big objectives that are in front of this industry related to sustainability, related to efficiency, the challenge that this industry has, it still doesn't have a roadmap.
You're right. You're spot on that one. That is so brilliant and insightful, because you're right. We hear it. We hear AI. We hear edge. We hear cloud. We hear all of this stuff. We hear Industry 4.0. And still, it sounds cool. It sounds good. But I love the fact that you're actually executing. And I have to ask the question. You said 4 years ago, you started this particular company-ish, give or take a few. What was the dream at that time? What made you say, yeah, I want to start this? What did you see at that time?
I saw a problem I went out to solve. Every engineer goes out to solve a problem, and without recognizing where you will end up. What irked me and got me started was I was working with industrials to help them basically provide connectivity and help them collect data. Then I realized that data was becoming basically a just information for them, where they were just they were good at hoarding that data, but that information that really needed to be used wasn't happening.
Yeah.
And then I also saw that even though it was their data, it was the data that the industrial companies own and collect, they still were unable to access that data. All they got was for some fancy charts at times and trends and analysis, but were they really using all of that data so that their own workforce could really do something with it? There was no buzzwords in my mind at that time. I wasn't necessarily looking at, it could be AI, it could be other technologies. What I went in to do really was to look at solving a problem. The reason AI becomes important is because if you look at the industrial world, it generates a lot of data. If you look at, especially
tsunami. It's a tsunami.
Like, I can give you different figures, like the oil and gas industry is creating terabytes of data, every day. And so that data is so huge in that volume. When you look at large volumes of data, veracity of data, different frequencies of data, what comes to mind? How do I look at that data, and how do I actually start to work with that data? That's where then the technology comes in, and that's really where we're starting to looking at AI and starting to look at how AI then can be used to look at and transform and work with that data. But then there's a third element to it. You can build all of the AI, but if the people still are not able to use that technology, then there is no point. Then I've created further more problem to it by making them further dependent on how to now leverage that AI. So where I ended up with was creating an interface between the operator of the plant and their data by providing them an interface where all of the AI was engineered and made available to them in a usable format. I made AI approachable, made AI usable, and made AI available for an industrial operator, for a plant engineer, for a process engineer, for a reliability engineer. So they are empowered to look at their own data, work with their data, just like how they've been used to working in spreadsheets. But let's allow them the scale. Let's allow them the extensibility so that they can now work with that large volume, veracity, frequency of data, and work on large complex data sets.
We're going to talk about sustainability, and there's some targets that are out there, and industry has to be aware of that. That's just without a doubt, and we're going to go down that road. But I have this one question. Because of the tsunami of data, because of that, the leveraging technology, innovation in a way that allows you to look at that tsunami and just pull out what is relevant. Do you pull the data out prior to going into the cloud, or do you do that analytics and saying, no, yes, this is data? How do you analyze your data, and where do you do it?
So we are all about operational data. It's all about the data that's coming out from their edge systems. It could be coming out from their controllers. It's coming out from the different sensors that are basically providing them the information of what's going on. And all that data is, a lot of this industry has actually put in the instrumentation. So about over $1 trillion has been spent just in instrumentation of this data. And now that they're able to collect that data, they're hoarding that data into different operational systems. That could be historians, that could be cloud systems, that could be even from ERP to home-built operational systems. That data is being collected. And then from an analytics perspective, what these industrials have been doing is leveraging a lot of analytics capabilities to basically look at that data. And that's really related to looking at some trends and analysis. But now what? And so we went in and solved that problem of now what? Now what do I do? And the next thing is, okay, how can I start using this data? If I have this data, can I start to look at forecasting what my yield would look like today, what my yield would look like 4 hours from now? Can I start to predict if I was to change any of my ambient conditions or any of my parameters, if I can start to tweak a little bit of the moisture levels, what would happen? What would be the ideal state I want to be running this line on? And so those are the things when the operators think about, they think, oh, I can't, I don't have the technology, I don't have access into my data. That's where they would tap into, they would bring in some heavy hitter consultants, they would bring in data specialists who would come in, and they might have the expertise on the data, but they don't have the subject matter expertise. And that's really where this industry needed to change the approach, and we started to basically put the operator in the center of the universe and say we need to augment the operator. And Scott, there were multiple reasons for it. One of the major reasons is because this industry needs to institutionalize this knowledge. There's a gap of these resources. There's a gap in terms of that expertise that's going to hit this industry in the next decade, because a lot of this workforce is about more than 30% of this workforce is an aging workforce. So as you see that shifting out, there's a huge gap that gets created. So it's very important to institutionalize that knowledge and start preparing the organizations for that shift.
So what I hear you saying, which is interesting, you are able to provide that tactical data for real-time action. And that is operationally, I can look at the data, I can make decisions and optimize my whatever manufacturing asset based off and that institutional side where I'm collecting that information and whether we like it or not, it's going to happen, retirement, that knowledge out the door, be able to institutionalize that. Let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about sustainability, why that is important from the perspective of AI.
Well, I think it's going to be one of the key drivers. It might not seem like it, but if you look at this industry and you look at sustainability, the manufacturing, the industrial side accounts for 25% of the global carbon emissions. You're responsible for 1/4 of the emissions.
Is that globally? Is that globally like 20? That's 25% global. Got it.
Yes.
Got it.
And out of that 25%, close to about 50, a little less than 50% of that just comes from the manufacturing of cement, steel, ammonia, and ethylene. You know why that is? Because that's all infrastructure that we're building, right? Yeah. And that's critical, but that is also important to recognize all that infrastructure that we're building is also creating an emission of 45% of the industry's carbon emission.
That's interesting. And it's one of those things, you need it. You can't stop it, right? You need the infrastructure, but you have to think about it differently. You have to figure that out.
And so if you look at some of the industry stats, it is why, if you look at different industries, that's just one part of it. But if you look at metals and mining, you look at food, everybody is making a contribution there to those carbon emissions. I had some interesting things looking at, we work very much in the food industry too. And agriculture is estimated to account for over 70% of the global water use. It's one of the scarce resources that we would have if we continue on that path.
Yeah.
Food supply chain is responsible for another 30% of the GHG emissions. Some interesting fact was that if food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitting country in the world.
Wow.
After US and China.
Wow.
You really want to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
And we're going to venture into this, is a lot of that carbon being produced as a result of inefficiencies with the assets?
So, Scott, you have to really break it down. Yes, it's being produced in multiple ways. Every industry is obviously contributing to it in one way or the other. In certain industries, over utilization of the assets, any of the assets that they're running is causing that. In certain industries, it's the high utilization of the fuel, because energy being one of their largest consumptions, especially in ag business, you would see, or in the oil and gas sector as well. But every bit makes a difference for Scott. If you look at the amount of waste that gets generated through a production line, and take any of the industry, take metals, take cement, or take food, if they can start to control the waste throughout the line, they can start to make a difference. I got somebody threw out some random stats with me, and they said one of the large food manufacturers that is producing the chips, they end up creating more than $30 billion worth of waste, and all that waste goes into landfills.
You would think that there's a financial incentive to be able to make your organization, your operations as efficient as you possibly can, right? Makes sense.
In most traditional ways, as they look at, yes, they look at energy as a huge cost, and they're always trying to optimize that. They look at raw materials as a huge cost, and they're trying to optimize that. Is everything else on part of the CFO's agenda as yet? I would say not really, Scott. Let's call it out. The CFO's agenda is only looking at how am I looking at my margins today, and how are going to improve those razor thin margins tomorrow so that I can sustain this business. And that's why this industry has been always in a firefighting mode. And one of the big things that why I call it a movement is because this has to start transitioning from the top to the bottom. The mindsets have to start shifting. The mindset about I'm always in a firefighting mode, that's because we're continuously doing the same things. If humans are looking at things and saying good and bad, we haven't yet moved into the 21st century, because a human has been doing that forever in this industry. Oh, it's good, it's bad. Let me get random sampling and I'm going to find out what's going on. That's not how this industry should be running. We have enough tools and technologies, and we have made enough progress that we should be able to now leverage tools and technologies for that purpose. We should be able to leverage, either platform like ours or technologies like this where they can tell you anything before even that happens. So we're not contributing to this sustainability challenge that we're faced with right now. We should be able to control this well in advance, not find after the fact. We have been, and we continue to be operated in a reactive manner.
God, it's a human. You're hitting on all the points. I mean, without a doubt. How will AI help us with sustainability if I'm a company? How?
Well, so there are three ways of looking at this. And I learned this from my customers, really. It's not that, it's earth-shattering revolution that I'm going to do. I've actually learned it by working with these customers.
Right.
So one of the key, sustainability is achieved in three ways. One is you look at your current operations and you optimize that. That's where you can start to already gain, and we have proven this, is you can already start to gain 20 to 30% of efficiency gains just by optimizing your current assets and your current operations. The next thing that comes in that is, the next phase that comes is then you go from optimization to looking at alternative sources of energy. That can further now go from, if you were at that 20%, you can start to further gain 30 to 40% by looking at alternative sources. And then over the course of time, also start to embed new technologies. As your assets are aging and you're starting to replace this, what this industry would end up doing is start to bring in more energy efficient assets into play as well. But that's actually the roadmap of how you gain sustainability. One of our customers, just in one of their plants, actually, it's a food ingredient manufacturer. In one of their plants, they started to look at how they were generating energy through their cogeneration assets, and realized that they were always running them at 100% efficiency, even when the plant demand didn't require them to run the assets at 100%. Because, it's too hard to keep on going back and forth.
You can't cycle those things down, up and down, right? Up and down. You can't.
And then that requires, more resources, and that requires then repeated intervention that just they didn't have the ability to do. So that was the easiest thing. And then they recognized that, and that's where, I'm talking about a very simple way of how you start to optimize this. So they started to look at then how we can use data so that the data can tell us if the plant demand is X amount, how to run each of these assets that's supplying the energy. So they actually set that, and they connected the platform, and they've been using it now for the past almost 4 years. And what they have been able to do is now create a completely closed loop system. So the plant feeds the data and tells our system of what the plant demand is. The system then connects back into these assets and say, run asset 1 or run boiler 1 at 40% efficiency, boiler 2 at 70%. Don't need to run boiler 3 because the plant doesn't need it right now. And then takes that message back into the control system. So there's no human in the loop required. Right. And runs that system, and it's been running it for the past, 4 years now. And
probably put in a lot of coin in the pocket too, as well as that whole sustainability. I mean, it's truly win-win everywhere.
They have been reporting that year over year, they have been able to reduce their fuel consumption by more than 4% just by looking at these small assets I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then over 20 million pounds of carbon emission reduced every year.
So why? What are the forces that are requiring businesses to look at this? What regulations are going to be in place? What are we doing here?
Well, so one of the mandates really is from the industry. If you look at the mandate, is really to be achieving certain carbon efficiencies and our net zero emission mandate for 2030, and then further into 2050, where everybody is looking at, zero carbon emissions, zero.
By the way, I want to make sure that 2030 is just still right around the corner. FYI, it's only 9 years away. So if you look at 2030 and just go, no, it's 9 years away. It's just like right there. Correct. Before you know it, you're going to be on 2030.
That's why I talk about this as passionately as I do, because I think we all need to get on that train of passion for this. And if we need to go beyond the passion project into the CFO's mandate now, the CFO's mandate, the CEO's mandate, it shouldn't just be in the operations team looking at how we're improving on our continuous improvements projects. No, it's no more about that. It really needs to be what are we doing about all the waste? What are we doing about energy? What are we doing about water? And we need to look at this in a combined way that all contributes towards sustainability, right? Because right now it's department by department, it's very segregated. And that's why a lot of the AI that also gets applied is very segregated. Nobody has looked at this. How do we apply different technologies that allow us to hit these kind of metrics? Nothing happens overnight. 9 years, it would be gone.
It's just like a blink of an eye. I'm just telling you. When you mentioned this, and I'm thinking, and then you said, hey, it's 9 years in our off conversation. And I just said, oh my gosh, I had the wrong perspective. That's right around the corner, and that's got to happen now.
Right. And the only way it can happen is when it becomes part of the mandate. It's no more about just a nice to have. It's about And they can really, those are the few things that can start contributing. How am I going to reduce my water consumption? How am I going to reduce the waste that I'm generating every day? And how I'm going to actually control my energy consumption and utilization throughout these. If they can just start simply with looking at those things, that's really where I've seen customers, when they simplify it that way, they're able to then identify, hey, where can I start today? Then where can I go tomorrow?
Yeah.
That helps them get on that journey of sustainability. It's as simple as that. And I know it's not easy for them to start to immediately all of a sudden prioritize it. But guess what? If the mandate is about reducing costs as well, and how you're going to actually look at, covering that labor shortage as well, all of those things help you there as well. Because what you're going to end up doing is, if you reduce the waste, you've already started to impact your bottom line. If you can start to reduce energy consumption and control it, that's helping on the bottom line too. And then if you can actually put the operator to control it, that's going to help your labor shortages. So it eventually all feeds into those mandates too.
Roadblocks. And what you're saying, I mean, it's on the money, but there are roadblocks. And I'm not saying don't come to me or Humera and complain about this. It's got to happen because it's a mandate and you got to figure it out. But what are the roadblocks?
So to be just very honest about this, Scott, I think one of the biggest roadblocks is the mental roadblock. Oh, it's too hard. It's too difficult. Yes. It's the myth about technologies like AI that stops people from leveraging it to its full capacity.
Yeah.
The other is the siloed transformation approaches. Every group, every organization looking at silo. There is the companies that I see the most successful that we have worked with are the ones that look at this at scale. You will learn certain places, you will fail at certain places, but the success that you will create through this journey is what's going to help you get ready and meet your objectives for 2030 and 2050.
And it's got to happen yesterday. I just said that. I mean, you and I share the same sort of, the passion and anxiety to saying, hey, we've got to do it now. I don't know why, but it is what it is. We have to wrap it up, unfortunately. I can have this conversation for a long time, Humera. How do people get a hold of you and say, yep, I like what she's talking about? Best way to get a hold of you?
Just go to canvas.io, click on, how to connect with us, different ways, find a demo, book a meeting, and that's the best way. And you would find that our team, which is a combination of subject matter experts as well as data people that actually know how to work the industrial data would be happy to work with you.
Excellent. I like that. Go out to her stat card too, man. It's Humera Malik. Did I get that right? Malik?
Yeah.
I hope so. Malik. Find her. Reach out there too as well. She's got a great stat card. CEO Canvas is the company. Fantastic. Thank you very much for being on the Industrial Talk podcast, Humera.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Scott.
It's been wonderful. It is the number one industrial-related podcast in the universe. Just FYI. I think I've oversold it. All right, listeners, we're gonna wrap it up on the other side. So fear not. We're gonna have all the contact information out on industrialtalk.com, and of course, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right, a big, hearty thank you to Humera Malik. Canvas AI is the company. Go out to canvas.io. Find out more. I'm telling you right now, if you're not looking into data as a way of solving some of your challenges, I mean, I like the fact that she brought up the point that it could augment your workforce. And I mean, it's really important, especially today when we have a real tight workforce. She's great. She's a rock star, data rock star. All right, again, IoT Solutions World Congress in conjunction with the Industrial Internet Consortium. This event is in Barcelona. It's incredible. Got to put those two things on your bucket list. October 5th through the 7th, 2021, right around the corner, I'm telling you. And the next one is the Manufacturing and Technology Show. This is in Cleveland, Ohio, November 9th through the 11th. Let's get our life back in order. Let's visit these things. All right, be bold, be brave. Dare greatly, change the world. Thank you very much for joining. We're going to have another great interview right around